St. Peter's Basilica, centre of one of the most unusual countries in the world. In the heart of Rome lies a totally independent state, the Vatican City. At its head sits the last absolute monarch in Europe, the Pope. From behind the stone walls and guarded chambers of one of the world's most powerful and influential countries, he ministers to over 1 billion Catholics around the globe. Beyond the notoriously private Vatican doors lies a world steeped in history, authority, and religious devotion. From the lavishly decorated rooms, a highly ritualized system is dedicated to running one of the world's oldest superpowers. Like any other country, the Vatican has its own government. It's run by an American, Cardinal Edmund Shoker. His role is like that of a governor or mayor.
I have responsibility for the day-to-day operation of all of Vatican City. Make sure I read this again just before it is a sovereign state. It's a sovereign country. Anything else?
No, we're all set.
Good, we can go home. And that's very important for the Holy Father, so that he is not living in some other country where he could be subjected to the civil laws of another country and could be subjected to a king or a president or whatever else. So I think that's a very practical reason for having a territory.
The Vatican covers only 0.4 square kilometers, a walled city surrounded on all sides by the hustle and bustle of Rome. Beautifully manicured gardens make up a third of its area, but they are rarely seen by outsiders. "5,000 people work for the Vatican, but only around 500 live within its walls, and less than half of these have Vatican passports. Entry is tightly controlled. No one gets through the gates without a special permit. Once inside, every room is guarded. The Vatican has its own shops, post office, and even a petrol station. Although the Pope is primarily a spiritual leader, most countries around the world appoint an ambassador to the Vatican City, or Holy See. Special delegations, like this one from the President of Nicaragua, have regular private audiences with the Pope. Security measures are at the highest level. The Holy See appoints its own ambassadors, called papal nuncios, all over the world. Catholicism is the only religion to have permanent observer status at the United Nations. A private audience with the Holy Father is regarded by Catholics to be the privilege of a lifetime. A small religious token blessed by the Pope himself is presented to each individual. The Pope can't meet everyone in person, so he reaches out to thousands more through Vatican Radio.
Ok, stiamo registrando anche? Ok, quando vogliono. Pronti? Scusami.
Time here in Rome is 12:16. Now,
Vatican Radio is the grandmother of radio stations. It was Pope Pius XI who was something of a closet scientist who decided or realized that radio waves were the way to reach the rest of the world and called the top man to do the job for him, the man who'd invented radio, Guglielmo Marconi. And that was way back on the 12th of February, 1931.
Pope Pius XI had asked Marconi to set up Vatican Radio for him. It was a historical moment when the inventor himself introduced the Pope's first message. It was broadcast in Latin and then relayed worldwide.
John Paul II has been called the great communicator. This really is a megaphone through which he can let the world know what his message is.
As the spiritual centre of Catholicism, the Vatican attracts pilgrims, believers and non-believers from all over the world. 3 young Americans, specially chosen by their bishops in the United States, are training to be priests here. They're in their final year with the North American College at the Vatican. But it's not all hard work. Rome is a city full of opportunities.
It's been a great experience to immerse myself into the culture. It opens up my eyes to what, not everything outside of South Texas is wrong. My lateral movement is just phenomenal.
I grew up on a small farm in Nebraska, the Great Plains, and we raised hogs and cattle.
They got more class than the New York Yankees. They're not winning it every.
Vatican City State, for me, it's got quite an involved and tortuous history. Here you've got this little piece of turf, but it doesn't belong to any other nation. It's as if the church, through a long period of history, has found its way to belonging really to humanity.
And nowhere is the power of the church more concentrated than the Basilica of St. Peter's. It's reputed to be the burial place of one of the church's most powerful icons. The Basilica of St. Peter's at the heart of the Vatican is reputed to be the burial place of St. Peter, the first pope, appointed by Jesus himself.
From day one, I wanted to be closer to the tomb of Peter. Here's the man that died here, and here's the man buried beneath. And from then on out, I wanted to be a guide to lead people to that experience. You get into that earthy reality of the martyrdom of Peter, and then you come up into the basilica itself, and then you see the basilica. Then you realize its purpose. The purpose of that beauty and splendor is to give glory to that martyrdom upon which the basilica is founded, and then glory to God for whom Peter died. This is what you hope people realize when they see this splendor, is it's for you, and this is your treasure.
The basilica itself is a unique work of art. Its famous dome is finely decorated with mosaics, designed by the great Renaissance artist Michelangelo. The Vatican has been making mosaics since the 4th century. They're tiny pieces of glass, some made with pure gold. In the Vatican's own workshops, subtle shades are used to create new mosaics, which are exported all over the world. The Pope loves to give them as presents when he goes abroad. The Vatican owns so many works of art that they have never been counted, and new paintings and statues are still being commissioned.
This is the niche, so that I can see that it is well placed, facing everyone entering the Vatican.
When Michelangelo designed this part of St. Peter's, he included a number of vacant niches. A new statue is being commissioned for this spot. In 1546, Michelangelo became the chief architect of St. Peter's Basilica. Dr. Pergolizzi and Bishop Lanzoni are his present-day successors. They're examining a scale model of the new commission for the courtyard.
And this side expresses the real movement of the statue, and also the cloth.
The statue of Saint Maria Josepha is just one of the many new works for the basilica. The church serves a living community, and St. Peter's must remain a living monument to Christianity. The quarries of Carrara have been producing the finest marble in the world since Roman times. Sculptor Romano Cosci has been chosen to create the new statue.
I mean, to work in St. Peter's, what can I say? It is the heart of the world. And then also, to be allowed to work in a niche of Michelangelo, well, for me, I feel so small and yet so rewarded by such an opportunity.
Michelangelo used to camp out on the mountain for months at a time, looking for the right piece of marble. Romano himself has spent 4 months searching for a particular piece of white marble. This is the exact spot where Michelangelo chose his blocks. It's the most ancient part of the quarry. The most famous work in St. Peter's is Michelangelo's Pietà. It was carved from a single block of Carrara marble in around 1498. Romano is just beginning work and is keen to capture the essence of St. Maria Josepha. She was a Spanish nun who died in 1912. The sculpture will take between 7 and 8 months to complete. St. Peter's Square was designed by the Baroque artist Bernini. 140 statues of saints are placed all around the tops of the colonnades. Saints are ordinary people who lived extraordinary lives. Once they are canonized by the Church, they can then be prayed to.
Who do you know in heaven?
Vatican Radio offers a modern way for believers to contact their chosen saints.
Saintly solutions for everyday problems.
Laura Angella's programme helps people decide which saints to pray to, so they can get particular messages to God.
As a young girl, Joan of Arc heard voices of saints.
Aspetta, via, su!
Pope John Paul II has made it his mission to identify new saints. He has declared more saints than any other pope in living memory. Preparations are being made for the up-and-coming celebrations when 8 people will be beatified, the first stage in becoming a saint. Their covered portraits are being hoisted high above St. Peter's Square in time for the ceremony. Proving that people are worthy of sainthood is a long process. First, the Vatican makes a declaration that this person has led a holy life and has performed a miracle, or has died as a martyr for their faith. In a small corner of the Vatican grounds, the gardeners are working hard to create floral arrangements for the beatification celebration. In a grand ceremony to be held later today, 8 people are being beatified. From this day on, they will be known as blessed. The Pope will preside over the celebration, and the Swiss Guard will take up their positions. The specially recruited guards are the Pope's private army. On public occasions like this, he is extremely vulnerable, and whenever he appears, they are ready to protect him. 50,000 chairs will be laid out. Everyone who attends must have a seat and a ticket. Soon the square will be teeming with people welcoming their new heroes. Monsignor Robert Sarno is a Vatican expert on the Declaration of Saints.
The process of making saints in the Church is one of the most democratic that there is. The Church, first of all, asks the faithful whether they believe that a person was indeed a martyr or that a person did indeed live a truly holy life, and as a result that person is now in heaven with God.
After today's beatification, the subjects will be halfway towards sainthood. After the ceremony, they will need to work provable miracles from heaven before they receive the full title of saint. Mother Teresa of Calcutta, seen here in 1997 at her final meeting with the Pope, is currently the most widely recognized person likely to be canonized. Having existed for nearly 2,000 years, the Church is the oldest institution in the world. And nothing happens quickly. 80 volumes of testimony about the holy life of Mother Teresa have to be closely examined. Panels of theologians and doctors will need to investigate the miracles she has claimed to have worked. Her intentions and good deeds will be scrutinized. Historically, challenging the evidence in favor of a potential saint was the work of a single person, the devil's advocate.
The devil's advocate is not any longer one individual person, but is everyone who's involved in the process, seeking the truth. Because in reality, the process is so serious, because it actually is a declaration of the Church about itself.
Amongst the 8 people being beatified today are 2 martyrs, people who gave their lives for their faith. One of them is a priest from Czechoslovakia, Dominik Trečka. Father Marazzo is in charge of collecting the evidence for candidates for sainthood. He's just taken delivery of a delicate glass vial containing a bone from the finger of the deceased priest. This relic will be presented to the Pope. Dominik Trečka was born in the Czech Republic in 1886. He became a priest in the Redemptorist order in 1917. In 1948, when the communists took over, he was arrested, tortured, and accused of being a Vatican spy. He died from tuberculosis in appalling prison conditions. But why does the Church place such high importance on relics?
Why do we preserve these relics? So that the people can have a place, a reference point for their prayers. It's a human sentiment, agreed. It may even be an emotional one. But it reflects this continuity, this close unity between the earthly and the heavenly Church.
The first of 50,000 people from around the world pour into St. Peter's to support their local heroes. Each group is assigned a certain area in the cordon square. These are friends, relatives, compatriots and advocates of particular future saints. They've arrived 3 hours early to get a good view of the Pope. By 10 o'clock the square is packed and the ceremony is in full swing. For the first time, the faces of the individuals, from now on the blessed, are revealed for all to see. This pomp and pageantry is unique to Catholicism. In front of the crowd, the Pope has decreed he is certain that these humans are in heaven with God. People who need their help can now pray to them. Relics of the Beatified are presented to the Pope. These preserved body parts are often mounted in jewelled containers. They are now considered holy and ready to be worshipped. At the North American College, Deacon Michael Keating acknowledges that belief in such mysteries is still a vital part of belonging to the Catholic community.
You know, until heaven changes, the Church isn't going to change. The Church is in the business of translation. So in every age, you're taking an age-old and ever-fresh truth that needs to be translated anew, afresh for every generation.
Hey, Paul, while you're in there.
Budweiser. You know what? Let me have a Carlsberg.
Could I have a Carlsberg too, Paul, please?
If there's any left. My high school days were girls, sports, and parties. Now, I had doubts, maybe getting married,
One step down from
having kids, being rich and famous. But I began to realize, you know, those things are just temporary. Being rich and famous, at least. Being married, well, in a sense, the priesthood is a sort of marriage commitment. Being married to the church.
What?
The brotherhood, the men around you, can see when things happen to you that you might not notice. Changes in your demeanor, changes in the way you approach life. And these might be good or bad. Bad in the sense that they might say, hey bro, you're kind of down these days.
Well, everyone's getting confused.
And then in times of distress, it's invaluable to have somebody who can just unload and just really expose your fears.
I'll still be standing talking to Greg.
Today, faith is a personal matter. But at one time, the Church was such a powerful institution that it even dictated royal relationships. The Pope exerted enormous influence over the kings and queens of Europe. He decided who would marry whom. Not everyone agreed. King Henry VIII petitioned the Pope to annul his first marriage to Catherine of Aragon. He wanted to take a second wife, Anne Boleyn. This document was signed by almost all the English bishops and senior aristocracy. Their waxed seals are attached. But the Pope refused, and eventually the English Church broke away from Rome. The Vatican's past is preserved in over 60 kilometres of humidity-controlled archives. Documents date back to the 9th century, and many have yet to be catalogued. Father Pagano is in charge of the archive and has worked here for nearly 30 years. Some of the documents written by popes to their nuncios were designed to remain secret.
Among other things, we have the cipher. In other words, the secret code that was applied to the nuncios for secret correspondence.
This document dates from the 15th century and was part of a secret correspondence between the Pope and his Spanish representative. There are documents in the secret archives which after nearly 400 years are still sensitive. In this vault lies detailed evidence of one of the Church's most public wrongs. In the Vatican archives lies the history of the Church, even the parts it wishes it could forget.
These are the original documents taken from the volume of the records of the trial held in 1633 of Galileo Galilei, as you can read in the frontispiece. Against the Galileum Galilei, mathematician, In one of these, we have the handwritten signature in the form, I, Galileo Galilei, have made my deposition as above.
The scientist Galileo overturned the accepted view that the Earth was the centre of the universe. He invented the modern telescope and proved that the Earth moved round the Sun. The Church's prosecution of Galileo is still debated today. Father George Coyne is director of the Vatican Observatory at Castel Gandolfo, the Pope's summer palace. Recently he was on a committee that re-examined the trial of scientists Copernicus and Galileo.
The Galileo case still lingers as a bit of a thorn in the side of the Church, because the Church has a tendency to want to save face all the time, rather than simply admit, it's human to make mistakes. We learn by making mistakes. And the Church is a human institution. I mean, this never admitting you made a mistake is absurd. The Genesis and the whole Bible teaches no science, none, zero, because modern science came to be, beginning in the 17th, 18th century. Galileo, quoting a cardinal, said, and it's kind of cute, the scriptures were written to teach us how to go to heaven and not how the heavens go.
So why is the Vatican involved with science today?
Many people say that we're being prepared in order to baptize extraterrestrials to get there before the others do, or to convert these atheistic, agnostic scientists. It has nothing to do with all of that. We're a pure research institute. We're not there either to prove or disprove any of the Church's teachings.
In Arizona, the Vatican has a new state-of-the-art telescope to research, amongst other things, collapsing stars. But the Vatican cannot easily break with tradition. All official documents are still written in Latin. Father Reginald Foster, a brilliant linguist and teacher, is the Pope's principal Latinist. Deacons Michael and Paul are brushing up on their Latin pronunciation and comprehension.
Well, he wrote one of these things, De mulieribus claris, de?
Concerning?
Okay, claris mulieribus.
Is this blonde women?
No, famous women. I think they could be brilliant women, or sparkling women, or famous women. The Latin text was the official text, and everyone in the world understood it, and that was the end of the story. Now things have changed. We've come a long way, baby, or something. If Latin isn't relevant, then there's nothing relevant in this life. Because everything is coming from here. Everything. Vocabulary and in our mentality and literature and everything else. If you don't know this, of course, you're just sitting there looking stupid, that's all. But it's interesting here.
Whilst the music and language of the Church have remained unchanged for hundreds of years, ancient buildings also serve as a constant reminder of a rich heritage. Parts of these date back to Roman times. Their maintenance and restoration is an ongoing challenge. The world-famous Sistine Chapel has recently been restored. Maurizio De Luca was involved and is now head of painting restoration. He's beginning work on 15th century frescoes in the apartments used by the infamous Borgia Pope, Alexander VI.
Guarda. Ah, now look at this. The donkey has an ordinary robe, but the bull, which is the emblem of the Borgia, has a gold cord between its horns. Beautiful, isn't it? It's a way of honoring the Borgias.
Rodrigo Borgia bought his way into the papacy at the same time that Columbus discovered America. He used his position to acquire land and money, ruthlessly murdering anyone who got in his way. These beautiful rooms were decorated by Pinturicchio. Maintaining the Vatican, its buildings, statues and art collection is an ongoing task. Father Alan Dustin, a Dominican priest, was appointed to head up the patrons of the arts. His job is to raise money to restore Vatican art treasures. His favourite project is the restoration of the 16th century building in the Vatican Gardens, a place very few people have ever seen. Until recently, it was on the verge of collapse.
It just happened that over all these centuries, these collections appeared here in this 112.5 acres. Now, we can't just let them disappear because they are the world's heritage.
The restoration has been funded by a private foundation in New York. It's costing several $1 million.
Many of our patrons are Catholic, but just as many are not. Some are not even particularly interested in religion, but they're very interested in art conservation.
Restoring 16th century plasterwork demands the skill of dedicated specialists. They're restoring the Cascina, the garden house of Pope Pius IV.
When it's finished, we'll have some sort of inaugural ceremonies, and then it'll be a perfect place for concerts or dinners in the summer, and I believe they will be open to my using that with the patrons, particularly those who have funded it.
It's been estimated that to look at every item in the Vatican's 8 kilometres of art galleries for 1 minute would take 12 years. But few see the vast restoration workshops beneath the galleries. Maestro De Luca supervises all of the Vatican's painting restoration. Deep inside the Vatican, fine artworks are pored over by artists, each with a specialised skill. A specialist restorer, Cornelia Perez, is working on a Van Gogh, which was painted in an asylum in 1889.
The varnish has been taken off, gets the enormous brilliance, and that's really the artist speaking to us and makes us clear what he wanted to say with this gesture and with the colors. All the drama, but also the devotion comes out very, very nicely.
Every work in the Vatican's collection is hugely symbolic. These enormous tapestries created for the Sistine Chapel were designed by Raphael. The first hand-built motor cars used by the popes are kept in pristine condition. Alongside one of the first Pope-mobiles. Pope John Paul II is the most travelled pope in history. He's made 95 international trips, visited 127 countries, and made over 3,000 public addresses. His journeys have become synonymous with his Pope-mobile, which is recognised throughout the world. It was in a vehicle like this that the Pope was shot in Rome on May the 13th, 1981. It was an event that shocked the world. But the near tragedy hasn't prevented the Holy Father from travelling outside the Vatican.
I think that the Holy Father attributes his recovery to the intercession of the Blessed Virgin Mary. The attack occurred on the anniversary of the apparition of the Blessed Virgin Mary at Fatima in 1917. The Pope went to Fatima to say thank you to Mary, the Mother of God, for interceding to save his life. The bullet that was taken from his body was given to the shrine of Fatima and has been placed in the crown that is on the head of the image of Our Lady. One time later, I said to the Holy Father, before he went to Sarajevo, I said, do you really think it's safe to go there? And he said, the only place I've ever been hurt is St. Peter's Square.
The Pope insists on travelling in an open vehicle. This causes enormous concern for the Swiss guards and the undercover police.
There are fanatics, I'm sure, who would think of these places as possible targets. But for all of us, life is short. You know, each one of us knows that one day we're going to have to render an account to God for how we've lived our lives. So we can't be paralyzed by fear. Living our normal lives, doing what we should do, is the best response to those who seek to paralyze others with fear.
Security is taken very seriously. The dedicated corps of Swiss guards, the Pope's personal bodyguards, are crucially important. Being a Swiss guard demands complete commitment. They are specially recruited in Switzerland and sign up for a minimum of 2 years' service. Deacons Paul and Joseph are also practicing rituals. They're learning how to say Mass. Their teacher, Father O'Donnell, offers a critique of their latest efforts. The Mass is the reliving of the Last Supper, the celebration of the death and resurrection of Christ.
There's a good pace.
Let us pray.
Ah, first big mistake. Let us pray. You don't extend your hands, you hold them together. You say, let us pray, because you're leading the congregation into prayer. You're not greeting them. You're not drawing them into something.
Okay.
All right? So that's the first blooper, as we say. All right?
Take away the sins of the world. Have mercy on us.
What I think you should have done, here, if you'll hold this, when you break the host, you want to, I would take the half of the host and fraction it over the chalice, because it's almost as though you don't want people to see what you're doing there. It's like a hidden gesture.
Okay.
It's not something that the priest does privately, because remember, that's a symbol of the resurrection. So that's an important gesture. I wouldn't have done it that way.
Let us pray.
Flipping of pages. Are we praying, or are we finding our place?
All right, let's definitely.
Okay, let's go on our way.
The young deacons still have a few months to perfect their technique before they say Mass for real. But for the big occasions, the Vatican has a master of ceremonies, Bishop Marini. His job is to work out in minute detail the precise ceremonial movements of the Pope and all attending clergy. He stage manages every public ceremony in which the Pope is taking part. Whilst choreographing these events, Bishop Marini always stands next to the Pope. Some papal celebrations last for more than 3 hours.
This office has undergone a great expansion, because in comparison with the few papal ceremonies of previous times, we have moved on to a papal ceremony virtually every Sunday, and also during the week.
All the Pope's gestures and clothes have a symbolic meaning. The robes he uses, when he uses his mitre, when he carries his staff, and whether or not he wears his zucchetto, all have to be planned. The Pope has many accessories. Some, like this hollow staff, have been specially made for him.
This is very special, very light, made of silver with an aluminium pole. It is very light because the Holy Father nowadays gets too tired holding heavy things.
When the Pope speaks while holding his staff, he speaks as the living representative of Christ. His wardrobe of vestments is extensive, and what colour he wears is dictated by the religious calendar.
Here we see the robes that are used by the Holy Father in celebrations. This one is made of shantung silk. It is worn by the Holy Father. He might wear this when he wants a lighter robe, which is less tiring to wear.
Extravagant rituals typify the Vatican. It's the public face of the Church. But how daunting is the human sacrifice behind the ceremonial facade? Is the heart of Catholicism, a place where people's lives change.
It's one of those moments like before a big football match or something. You're nervous, you're about to go into St. Peter's. There's lots of people there.
Michael, Joseph and Paul are ordained deacons in St. Peter's Basilica. Every movement and gesture is carefully rehearsed, but the benefits are overwhelmingly spiritual.
Most profound was the moment of prostration. As I lied on the floor, I was thinking, like, this is amazing. This is just awesome. This is the Church at its best, where everyone is praying for these men, for me. What I left on the floor was a broken man. And when I rose a man of God.
Turning around and seeing face to face my classmates, all of us dressed in these garments, it was a striking moment. And the choir was singing very loudly, Laudate Domine, praise and joy to the Lord at that moment. And there was a great deal of joy. It was really electric. I'm still whole. I still have my personality, my character, flaws and strengths, but there's a new conviction.
It's as though everything that we had just done was gathered up, and I could just stand and take the whole thing in. And it was right there, I think, that both the joy and the gravity of what I and we had just done sort of rested on me.
promising obedience, promising celibacy. It was not, I can do this, but I have to do this. And I want to do this because I love what I'm going to be.
The face the Vatican presents to the world is one of richness and glory. But does this detract from the true meaning of faith?
If you look at it just as pomp and glitz, then take it all, sell it all, and give the money to the poor. But you have to ask yourself, first of all, who takes that decision? Can the Pope really do that? Well, he can't, because every item in the Vatican belongs to you and me. It's part of our patrimony. It's part of humanity's heritage. All these articles, all these beautiful things say something about your tradition and mine.
The Vatican's message has always remained constant. But as the world around it changes, keeping that simple spirituality is often difficult. The Church has survived for 2,000 years, longer than any other human institution. On those grounds alone, it can be seen as an ongoing success.